Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Michelle Gibbs, and I am passionate about helping scholarly mamas like you navigate your journeys with purpose so you can achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters. The reality is that scholarly mama life is multidimensional. We're scholars, yes, but we're also mothers, wives, and so much more with whole lives outside of academia. So how do we successfully navigate all this? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Only then can we begin the important work of becoming purposefully whole. And part of my own purposeful work is to create a space for us as scholarly mamas to grow, to reflect, and to become everything that we were meant to be. So, mama, are you in? Fabulous. Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Hey mamas, welcome back to episode 5 of the podcast. You know, when we reflect on the pandemic, especially the first year of it, it may seem impossible to feel any sense of hope or gratitude given what we'd been through. But in today's episode, I want to reflect on this. You see, on the 20th of March, 2020, everything changed. Literally, like a switch, everything changed. Initially, I was reluctant to even engage my thoughts about the pandemic and the impact it had on all of our lives. It was really difficult to process this on so many levels. Our home lives, or social lives, or work lives, and even the plans that we had for our future lives. We're all facing unprecedented change and adaptation, situated in a realm of uncertainty for the foreseeable future. Who would have imagined that we were ever going to live through a global pandemic? Without much notice, the world came to an abrupt halt right before our eyes. It was difficult to fathom the thought of having to adjust to that new normal of lockdowns and social distancing. It forced us all to change how we view the world. We spared our thoughts for the many lives stolen by that virus without much warning. Lives were lost in almost every corner of the world, with so many grieving families and horrifying stories of people taking their last breaths alone in isolation. It was truly a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. And then there were our frontline essential workers, our healthcare professionals, and our supermarket employees, or delivery drivers, or cleaners, or social workers, or probation workers, or teachers. And of course, we couldn't forget our refuse collectors and our postal workers, our police officers too, and everyone else who worked to keep society running while science tried its best to defeat this virus. I was so grateful for every one of these brave individuals, for those who were putting their lives at risk by facing the outside world every single day to make sure that we all could still enjoy some version of normality. They were reporting to work every single day to care for, to feed, to protect, to teach, to deliver to sanitize for us and our loved ones. Now, when we look back at the gravity of this pandemic, the enormity of the sacrifices made and the tragic losses that were suffered and the pain experienced, suddenly having to adapt to our then daily realities really seemed nothing more than a minor inconvenience in comparison. It was a small sacrifice for the greater good. Without a doubt, our lives changed drastically. I am sure that as scholarly mamas, we all have our stories to tell. At the start of the pandemic in the UK, I began working from home only. I was no longer traveling to London. No longer was I meeting students or colleagues face to face, recruiting patients for my research studies, or planning conference trips and research symposiums. An upcoming conference, which I was due to attend in Ireland in March 2020, was cancelled after a few weeks of limbo as we all came to terms with the gravity of the pandemic. But as things escalated, the decisions were made for us all. Flights had to be cancelled, refunded, hotel accommodation cancelled with immediate effect. There was no face-to-face clinical research, no in-person teaching, no in-person meetings, seminars, or any other academic activity. Zoom and Teams became our most used and most treasured modes of communication. Some suggested that this was a perfect time to get on with remote tasks like writing my thesis, preparing high-quality research publications, and finishing up those competitive grant applications we never had time for. Personally, I struggle to see how this could effectively translate into practice. This would have been impossible for me, especially when I was also expected to do justice to an overnight transition to home educating our boys. At the time, our third son wasn't born yet. Plus, my husband was still seeing patients every day on the front line of a healthcare crisis, so I was on my own with the boys at home during the day. It was simply unrealistic. Despite these challenges, though, there was still so much to be grateful for. I was thankful, firstly, for my awesome husband who tried his best by doing all he could at home while he was not at work. This allowed me to do what I could for my PhD research. Secondly, I was grateful for my PhD supervisor who'd been nothing but supportive and understanding. Seriously, we need more like her. She urged me to do what I needed to do to look after my family and myself. This certainly relieved so much of that pressure. Thirdly, for my funder, a wonderful organization that also supported me through so many challenging times during my PhD. They reached out to me directly and offered their tangible support during the pandemic, and this took the form of additional funding and fellowship extensions if needed. In this situation, all I felt was gratitude. It gave me hope. Most of all, though, I was grateful for life itself, because where there's life, there's hope. So for a couple of months during the day, I continued homeschooling our boys, and at night when they were in bed, in the early mornings or on my husband's days off, I did what I could for my PhD. This presented its own challenges, and the main one I recall was fatigue. I became so exhausted, running on little sleep. And this was hard on top of the anxiety that I began to feel as the pandemic raged on. So I soon realized that this system of working was just not sustainable in the long term. And around that time, I found out that we were expecting our third son, which probably explained the extreme fatigue. I felt incredibly blessed by this wonderful news. However, the worries of being pregnant during a pandemic compounded an already emotionally charged state. My hair suffered as well, and one by one, my dreadlocks began to weaken and break. I couldn't get to the hairdressers, and reluctantly, I had to cut them off. But that, my dear, is a whole other story. Something had to give, right? A break from my PhD was the only way to get through this difficult period, and so that's exactly what I did. I was furloughed from my research post and had to temporarily interrupt my PhD studies. But my perspective on this is not what you might think. Sometimes when we're drowning under the pressure of everything, that's when we have to do what we have to do to save ourselves. Sometimes this may mean stepping out for a bit and doing something completely different for a little while to keep us emotionally above water, and that's okay. Be gentle with yourself, mama. It's okay to do what you must. Do something that sparks your creativity or gives you some renewed sense of self and purpose. Amidst the challenges, you could still find space for hope and gratitude in this scholarly mama journey. Try giving yourself permission to focus flexibly. That's exactly what I did. I challenged my perception of this interruption from my PhD. I embraced the time it afforded me with my boys as we were able to do some amazing things together, from celebrating a lockdown birthday to publishing my first children's book to welcoming our third son and setting up my blog and so much more. There were still things to celebrate despite the pandemic going on. What's interesting to me is that most of these things were outside of my PhD. If anything, it reminded me that I was more than my PhD. I was not defined by it. Please don't allow your PhD to stop you from devoting the time, the energy, the mindset, the focus to things that bring you joy and fulfillment. Yes, you're a scholarly mama, but don't let that rob you of your sense of hope, gratitude, purpose, and just love for the people and things that bring you joy. On the blog, I've shared some of the things that have kept me going during the most challenging times on this journey. These were the things that gave me hope and purpose. During that break, quote unquote, I was also able to focus more on my personal well-being, like getting back to walking for exercise, which I hadn't even noticed I'd neglected as much as I did. I was able to reflect deeply on how I wanted to change a few things about how I actually navigated the juggle struggle. I was able to find myself again. But it wasn't hard to see the impact the pandemic had in nearly every country around the world. News broadcasts were inundating viewers with pandemic updates. You'd have to be living practically under a rock, buried beneath the surface of the earth, to not know what was going on. If you're like me, with close family all around the world, you were compelled to also follow international news networks for those updates. Plus, of course, your regular telephone or video calls to family abroad to check to just see how things were on the ground for them. You appreciated those virtual interactions even more than before because you couldn't help but wonder just how long it was going to be before you or someone in your circle caught it. As a scholarly mama, it was so hard being separated from my extended family at a time like this. Health and safety concerns weren't limited to those in my immediate household, but extended across the seas. For me, family, whether immediate or extended, is everything. We didn't need a pandemic to make us close. We'd always been, even if we were not in the same physical location. But it did make us more appreciative of the technology, which allowed us to stay in regular contact during those hard times. Hello again, Zoom. Hello. Never before did we need technology this much. But have you noticed how the changes imposed on us from the pandemic didn't just alter the world around us, but also had a significant internal impact? No, just me? Oh, okay, just checking. The pandemic taught us that we're all connected. We all need each other, and the artificial barriers that we construct do nothing but divide us, leading to regression rather than progression as a society. And sadly, in many ways, we've still got a long way to go with this towards freedom and equality for all. But we live in hope. We are reminded of the true nature of human interaction and connection. or longing for those during a time when we couldn't have them forced us to immediately innovate in ways that would have taken us decades otherwise. Literally overnight, we were forced to change our way of life, and this presented a unique opportunity to do so for the better and not for the worse. Did we emerge on this side of the pandemic with a determination to do better? Did that horrific experience bring out something better in us? Amidst all that happened, I found myself imagining that perhaps the world emerged a better and kinder place. Maybe it was just my way of coping, as we all found new and innovative ways of doing that. But the dreamer in me, even then, desperately tried to find the silver lining in all of it. As a scholarly mama on journeys of becoming, I needed to hold on to whatever hope and gratitude I could muster. My wish was that in the aftermath of the pandemic, the world would have emerged a happier and better place, that people would interact with each other more and show more kindness, that academia would be more sympathetic to the needs of working parents, that families would seek to spend more quality time together, that we would all choose to live a life of purpose. No more putting off all the things we always wanted to do. I hoped that we would seek more joy in the present moment, rather than thinking that joy could only come from finishing a PhD or getting another, title or degree, or getting that promotion or securing that ideal academic job. I lived in hope that we would wake up from our comfortable slumber and rise to the challenge of creating a better world for our children to inherit. That period of global vulnerability gave us so much to reflect upon and taught us so many lessons. That old way of life was no more, at least for those who were insightful and reflective enough to see and learn from those lessons. That experience gave me fresh eyes and a new perspective. So I am holding on to my new specs like my life depended on it, because it really does. As I close, it's been hard to think about living through that pandemic, but these were just some of my personal reflections. I'd love to know yours. What were you most grateful for? If you lost a loved one during the pandemic, my heart goes absolutely out to you. I sincerely hope that you received the support you needed to help you through the unimaginable pain of your loss. If you didn't lose a loved one, did your life change drastically in other ways? Did you revert back to your old way of life, or did you move forward with a new outlook? And now, what are your hopes for the future? How do you want to implement those in your life today? Challenge those comfort zones and unhealthy work tendencies and join me on the journeys of becoming the best scholarly mama you can be, full of hope and gratitude. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please share it with another scholarly mama you know. Sorry, mama. Until next time, I am sending you all the love and gratitude your heart can handle. I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did and you want in on this movement, why not head over to mrsmummyphd.com. You can join the waitlist for our exclusive community of smart, purposeful, scholarly mamas. We'd love to see you on the inside. Remember, mama, these are our journeys of becoming.